Picture a California peat field in the early 1900s. A steam tractor, 48,000 pounds of iron and ambition, sinks helplessly into the wet soil. The wheels churn, the mud rises, the engine roars, but the machine goes nowhere. The man watching this disaster has spent years building these tractors. He has tried bigger wheels, wider wheels, different configurations. Nothing works. His most powerful machine is being swallowed by the earth it was designed to work. At the time, this seemed like just another failure in a long line of failures. Nobody thought the man standing in that muddy field would solve a problem that had defeated engineers across 2 continents, but only because they had no idea who this man would eventually become. Fast forward to today, and that failed tractor builder's name sits on yellow machines across 187 countries. His company employs 113,000 people, generates $67 billion in annual revenues, and commands a market cap exceeding $222 billion. The machines that build highways, dig mines, and raise skyscrapers on 6 continents all trace back to one man and one problem he refused to accept. This is the story of how a sawmill boy from New Hampshire built the Caterpillar empire. Benjamin Leroy Holt was born on January 1, 1849, in Concord, New Hampshire, the son of a wagon wheel maker who would teach him everything about how weight moves across terrain. If you've ever driven past a construction site, you've seen them. The massive yellow machines that dig foundations, move mountains of earth, and reshape the landscape of entire cities. Caterpillar Inc. Today, the company commands a market capitalization of over $222 billion, generates $67 billion in annual revenues, and employs nearly 113,000 people across 187 countries. From the copper mines of Chile to the construction sites of Tokyo, from pipeline projects in Siberia to highway expansions in Texas, the yellow iron is everywhere. The machines that build highways, dig mines, and raise skyscrapers across 6 continents all trace back to one man and one problem he refused to accept. Picture this: a California peat field in the early 1900s. A steam tractor, 48,000 pounds of iron, steel, and ambition, sinks helplessly into the wet soil. The wheels churn, the mud rises, the engine roars, but the machine goes nowhere. The most powerful farm machine in the state is being swallowed by the earth it was designed to work. The man watching this disaster unfold has spent years building these tractors. He has tried bigger wheels, wider wheels, different configurations. Every attempt to fix the problem has failed. Every solution has created new problems. The machines that move mountains today came from a man who couldn't stop his own machines from drowning in mud. Little did he know that removing those giant wheels entirely, replacing them with wooden tracks linked by chains, would birth one of the most recognizable industrial empires on Earth and give it a name inspired by the way it crawled. This is the story of Benjamin Holt. Benjamin Leroy Holt was born on January 1st, 1849, in Concord, New Hampshire. He entered the world as one of 11 children born to William Knox Holt and Harriet Parker Ames Holt. His father owned a sawmill and made wagon wheels for a living. This was not a family of inheritance or influence. This was a family that worked. The Holts earned everything with their hands. The sawmill sat at the center of their existence, timber deliveries arriving at dawn, hardwood being shaped and cured through the seasons, the endless rhythm of turning raw wood into wheels that could carry weight across rough American terrain, oak, hickory, ash. Benjamin learned the names and properties of these woods before he learned much else. He learned which species cracked under heavy stress and which ones held firm through years of punishment. He learned how moisture warped joints and weakened spokes. He learned how weight transferred through a wheel's hub to its rim to the ground below. There was no inheritance waiting for Benjamin Holt, no trust fund, no family estate. There was only the trade, the tools, and the work. The historical record preserves no words from young Benjamin. What it preserves is a pattern, a boy who learned by doing, who understood machines not from textbooks, but from building them alongside his father and brothers. By age 23, he had been given an ownership interest in the family business and assumed real operational responsibility. His classroom was the factory floor. His teachers were failure and repetition. But the Holt family would not remain whole. Benjamin's mother, Harriet, died in 1875. His father followed not long after. By the time Benjamin finally headed west to California in 1883, both parents were gone. He was 34 years old, orphaned in the adult sense. No family home to return to. No parental safety net waiting if things went wrong. Only the skills his father had drilled into him through years of sawmill labor and the brothers who had already scattered toward new opportunities in the West. The spark that would define Benjamin's life wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was years of accumulated understanding, working in his father's New Hampshire sawmill starting in 1869, preparing hardwoods for shipment west to his brother's growing California business. Benjamin handled the raw materials that would become wagon wheels day after day. He cut and shaped the wood. He watched wheels assembled and tested. He saw which designs held up and which ones failed. Through this repetitive labor, he came to understand something fundamental. The relationship between weight, surface area, and terrain was the core problem of locomotion. A wheel concentrated weight onto a narrow rim. Soft ground couldn't support that concentration. The wheel sank. He didn't know it yet, but he was already thinking about the problem that would make him famous. The future wasn't in New Hampshire. Benjamin's older brother Charles had already proven that. Charles H. Holt had gone west in 1864, landing in San Francisco and building C.H., Holt and Company, a wheel and carriage materials business that served California's booming agricultural economy. The timing was perfect. California's Central Valley was exploding with wheat farms, and someone had to build the equipment to work them. Charles showed Benjamin that the family trade could scale far beyond their small New Hampshire operation. Benjamin stayed east for years longer, learning the supply side of the business, while his brothers established the western beachhead. He mastered timber selection, knowing which trees from which forests produced the strongest wood. He learned the chemistry of wood curing, the logistics of cross-country shipping, the economics of moving heavy materials thousands of miles. Every skill would matter later. When he finally made the move to California in 1883, Benjamin brought decades of manufacturing knowledge with him. He also brought a crucial insight that would shape his approach to every product. Wheels built in San Francisco's moist coastal climate cracked and warped when they reached the dry interior valleys. The wood couldn't handle the environmental transition. The solution was obvious once you understood it. Build in Stockton, where the arid conditions allowed wood to cure properly before it ever left the factory. This was Benjamin's first practical lesson in adapting machinery to terrain. It would not be his last. In 1890, Benjamin married Anna Brown, daughter of Stockton pioneer Benjamin E. Brown. The marriage anchored him in local society during the transformative years ahead. Anna provided the domestic stability that allowed her husband to take enormous professional risks. While Benjamin obsessed over machines, Anna maintained the household and the social connections that kept the family rooted in the community. The turning point in Benjamin's ambition came as he watched California farmers struggle with the fundamental limits of animal power. Horses and mules could only pull so much weight. The Central Valley's vast wheat fields, some of the largest agricultural operations in the world, demanded something more powerful, something mechanical. Holt began studying steam-powered traction engines, machines that could theoretically replace dozens of horses. But he noticed something troubling in every demonstration he observed. The heavy steam tractors that already existed were constantly getting stuck. The rich delta soil that made California farmland so extraordinarily valuable was also impossibly soft and wet. Machines sank to their axles. Wheels churned uselessly in the muck. All that engine power meant absolutely nothing if you couldn't move. The ambition forming in Benjamin's mind wasn't simply to build tractors. It was to build tractors that could actually work in the real conditions of California agriculture. By 1883, Benjamin had buried both parents and followed his brothers west. He arrived in Stockton not as a young man chasing uncertain dreams, but as a seasoned manufacturer in his mid-30s, backed by decades of practical experience and ready to build something substantial. His brother Charles had created the California Foundation. Now Benjamin would transform it into something far larger. That year, the brothers established the Stockton Wheel Company, investing approximately $65,000 in a factory and employing about 25 men. To put that in perspective, $65,000 in 1883 represented serious capital. This was not a garage startup or a hopeful experiment. It was a real manufacturing operation with significant machinery, genuine payroll obligations, and substantial financial risk from the very first day. In January 1892, the brothers incorporated as Holt Manufacturing Company. Benjamin became president, assuming formal leadership of the enterprise he had helped build. The early products were familiar extensions of the family trade: wagon wheels, carriages, agricultural equipment adapted for Western conditions. But Benjamin pushed beyond wheels almost immediately. He couldn't stop thinking about terrain. He developed a side hill harvester that could work slopes as steep as 30 degrees while keeping the threshing mechanism perfectly level. The machine was a minor marvel of mechanical engineering, solving a problem that had frustrated California farmers for years. It was also a sign of the obsession to come. Benjamin Holt was consumed by the challenge of making machines work on difficult ground. By 1890, Holt had built his most ambitious machine yet, a monster he called Old Betsy. The steam tractor featured a 24-foot frame, generated approximately 60 horsepower, carried 675 gallons of water, and weighed roughly 48,000 pounds. Old Betsy could do the work of dozens of horses. In terms of raw pulling power, it was the most formidable farm machine in California. There was just one devastating problem. It kept sinking. The San Joaquin Delta contained some of the richest farmland in the world, deep, dark peat soil that was perfect for growing crops. Farmers could grow almost anything in that black earth, but the same soft, wet ground that made the Delta so fertile was a death trap for heavy machinery. Old Betsy would roll into a field and slowly, inexorably bury itself. The massive iron wheels would churn and spin, the mud would rise around the frame, and the most powerful tractor in the state would sit there, helpless and immobile, while farmers watched their expensive investment disappear into the ground. Holt tried bigger wheels to spread the weight. He tried wider wheels for more surface contact. He tried every wheel configuration his engineers could devise. Nothing worked. Each solution created new problems, machines so massive and awkward that they were nearly impossible to steer, maintain, or transport. A tractor that can't move is just expensive scrap metal. And Benjamin Holt was running out of ideas. The sinking problem consumed him. Holt wasn't the first person to imagine a tracked vehicle. The concept had existed in patents and theoretical designs for decades. Engineers across Europe and America had sketched endless track systems on paper. But paper drawings and working machines are very different things. In 1903, Holt traveled to England specifically to study ongoing crawler experiments. He wanted to see if someone, somewhere, had cracked the code. What he found was failure after failure. The European machines couldn't survive real field conditions. They broke down under heavy loads. The tracks came apart. The linkages failed. They were engineering theories that collapsed when confronted with practical reality. Holt came home knowing two things with absolute certainty. First, the underlying theory was sound. A tracked system that spread weight across a larger surface area should work. Second, every existing execution was wrong. If he wanted a practical crawler tractor, he would have to build it himself. By late 1904, Holt had developed his own design. He instructed his mechanics to remove the rear wheels from a steam tractor entirely and replace them with something no one had successfully built before, a continuous track system made of wooden planks linked together by chains. Instead of concentrating the machine's enormous weight onto narrow wheel rims that dug into soft ground, the track would spread that weight across a much larger surface area. The patent application would later describe it as an endless, flexible traveling platform. On Thanksgiving Day, November the 24th, 1904, they tested the prototype, designated number 77, in a peat field on Roberts Island near Stockton. This was the same impossible soil that had swallowed Old Betsy and every other wheeled tractor before her. The tracked machine crawled across the soft ground. It didn't bury itself. It didn't stop. It didn't sink. It moved. The breakthrough had arrived. But the moment that would define the company and give it a name known around the world came a few months later. March 1905, an improved version of the tracked machine was being demonstrated in the fields outside Stockton. Company photographer Charlie Clements arrived to document the test for promotional materials. He looked across the field and saw the machine moving in the distance, but something seemed fundamentally wrong with what he was seeing. "They are not running," Clements said, confused. He couldn't see any wheels turning. The machine was moving, but there was no rotation visible from where he stood. Then he walked closer. He watched the tracks undulate across the soft earth, the linked wooden planks rising and falling in sequence, gripping the ground and pulling the massive steam engine forward through soil that had defeated every wheeled machine ever built. The movement was almost organic, rhythmic, flowing, relentless. "If that don't look like a monster caterpillar," Clements said. Benjamin Holt, standing nearby with his nephew Pliny Holt, turned to the photographer with a half smile. "What makes you think that?" But the name stuck. And Holt was smart enough to recognize what he had. He understood immediately that he had invented more than a machine. He had created an image, something people could visualize and remember. Over the next several years, he executed 3 strategic moves that transformed an engineering breakthrough into an enduring brand. First, he embraced the Caterpillar name completely, turning a photographer's casual observation into the company's identity. Second, he registered Caterpillar as a trademark with the US Patent Office on August 2, 1910, claiming continuous commercial use since 1904. Third, he launched an aggressive marketing campaign built around exclusivity and authenticity. There is only one Caterpillar and Holt builds it. US patent number 874,008 was issued on December 17, 1907. The first production tractor officially branded Caterpillar rolled off the line in 1909. By then, Holt's tracked machines were already proving themselves far beyond California agriculture, in Pacific Northwest logging operations, in road construction projects, in the massive aqueduct systems being built to bring water to growing cities. The mud problem was solved. The Caterpillar empire was being born. But success brought its own burdens, and the years surrounding Holt's greatest invention were shadowed by devastating personal loss. His brother Ames Frank Holt had died on October 7, 1889. His brother William Harrison Holt died on February 15, 1904, the very same year as the breakthrough test on Roberts Island. And Charles H. Holt, the older brother who had gone west first, who had built the foundation of the California business, who had believed in Benjamin's vision and helped make the company possible, died on July 8, 1905, just months after the Caterpillar was named. By the time Benjamin's invention was fully proven and entering production, the brother network that had built the company around him had collapsed entirely. 3 brothers gone in 16 years. Benjamin was now carrying the family business alone through its most consequential technical and commercial transformation. He left no recorded words about these losses. He left machines. Then came the war. World War I transformed Holt tractors from agricultural equipment into instruments of military power. From 1914 to 1918, Holt's company and licensed manufacturers produced approximately 10,000 Caterpillar tractors for wartime use. The machines that had been designed to cross California peat fields were now hauling artillery pieces and supply wagons across the churned, muddy battlefields of France and Belgium. The same tracks that prevented sinking in farm soil prevented sinking in the shell-cratered wasteland of the Western Front. Murray Baker, Holt's aggressive plant manager, pushed military contracts relentlessly. The company secured deals with Britain, France, and eventually the United States after America entered the war in 1917. The Caterpillar became a symbol of Allied logistics capability, but victory created its own devastating crisis. The war had pushed Holt toward production volume at the expense of innovation. Every resource went toward filling government orders. Meanwhile, a domestic rival named Sieg-El Best was capturing the American agricultural market with newer tractor designs and a much stronger dealer network. Best was building the future while Holt was winning the war. When the armistice came in November 1918, Holt found himself in an impossible position. Surplus machines sitting unsold, a weaker competitive standing in his home market, and a company that had traded its innovative edge for wartime output. Caterpillar's own corporate history is blunt about this period. Holt and Best needed each other. The Caterpillar name was famous around the world, but the company behind that name was now vulnerable in ways Benjamin had never anticipated. Imagine one more time a 48,000-pound tractor sinking into wet peat soil, the iron frame tilting, the wheels churning uselessly, the mud rising around the machine like quicksand swallowing a victim. That physical nightmare had been Benjamin Holt's daily reality before the tracked tractor breakthrough. Now, in a different way, it was happening again. His company was sinking into competitive quicksand, and this time, Benjamin Holt would not live to engineer the solution. To understand how far Benjamin Holt's invention ultimately traveled, consider the full arc of acceleration. In 1883, he started with 25 workers making wagon wheels in a Stockton factory. By 1897, just 14 years later, the company employed roughly 200 people and had sold more than 800 combined harvesters across California. The business had grown from a regional wheel shop to a genuine manufacturing power in less than a decade and a half. By 1918, his machines were helping win a world war. 10,000 Caterpillar tractors serving on battlefields across Europe. The track-type tractor expanded far beyond its agricultural origins. Holt machines moved into timber logging operations throughout the Pacific Northwest. They built roads through impossible terrain. They helped construct the massive aqueduct systems that would transform Southern California. They hauled equipment for mining operations in places wheels could never reach. The crawler wasn't just a farm tool anymore. It was the technological foundation for the entire modern heavy equipment industry. The Caterpillar name became synonymous with tracked machinery worldwide. When people anywhere on Earth thought about machines that could cross difficult ground, they thought of the crawling yellow tractors from Stockton. 5 years after Benjamin's death, the solution to his company's competitive crisis finally materialized. In 1925, Holt Manufacturing Company merged with CL Best Tractor Company to form Caterpillar Tractor Company. The deal was brilliantly complementary. Holt brought international reputation, the invaluable Caterpillar trademark, and established manufacturing facilities. Best brought domestic market strength, a superior dealer network, and a broader product line. CL Best, the rival who had quietly outmaneuvered Holt in the American market during the war years, became the first chairman of Caterpillar Tractor Company. The competition that had nearly weakened both enterprises became a partnership that would dominate the global heavy equipment industry for a century. The company renamed itself Caterpillar Inc. in 1986. The merger Benjamin never lived to witness created the industrial giant that now moves Earth on every continent. Today, Caterpillar Inc. employs approximately 112,900 people worldwide. It operates through 152 authorized dealers serving 187 countries. It generates $67.6 billion in annual revenues and commands a market capitalization exceeding $222 billion. The yellow machines bearing the Caterpillar name build highways, excavate mines, raise skyscrapers, clear forests, and reshape terrain from the Amazon basin to the Arctic Circle. Every single one of them descends from a wooden-tracked steam tractor that crawled across a California peat field on Thanksgiving Day, 1904, because a sawmill boy from New Hampshire refused to accept that his machines should keep sinking. Benjamin Leroy Holt died on December 5, 1920, in Stockton, California. He was 71 years old. Historical records suggest he died after a month-long illness, though the specific cause is not documented. There is no evidence he ever formally retired. He remained connected to the company he had built until the very end. He never stopped working. He never stopped building. No reflective deathbed quote survives in the accessible historical record. But Benjamin Holt's actions across 7 decades spoke with perfect clarity. He converted a photographer's casual joke into one of the world's most recognizable industrial trademarks. He converted an impossible mud problem into a revolutionary technology. He converted a family wheel shop into the direct ancestor of a $222 billion global empire. 5 years after his death, his company merged with his greatest competitors. The resulting corporation, Caterpillar Tractor Company, became the foundation of the modern heavy equipment industry. The yellow machines Benjamin never lived to see now operate on every continent, in virtually every country on Earth, building the infrastructure of human civilization. Benjamin Holt started as a sawmill boy in Concord, New Hampshire, learning why wagon wheels crack under heavy loads and how wood behaves when weight presses down through a hub. He ended as the man who removed the wheels entirely, and in doing so, built machines that could cross any ground on Earth. The empire that now spans 187 countries began with a simple observation on a spring morning in 1905, that a tractor crawling across a muddy California field looked like a caterpillar. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe. And until the next one, keep building.